Okay, so have you ever like caught yourself scrolling online
Mm-hmm.
and you've got like a shopping cart full of stuff
Yeah.
and you're just like, wait,
Yeah.
do I even need this?
Uh-huh.
Do I even like this?
Oh,
I
yeah.
had that moment recently and I was like,
Yeah.
what is going on?
Yeah.
Why do we buy what we buy?
Right.
And it turns out there's actually a whole science to it.
There is a whole psychology behind it. It's really interesting.
So for today's deep dive, we are cracking open Buy What You Love Without Going Broke by Jen Smith and Jill Sirianni.
Ooh, I love this book.
These ladies have some really interesting stories. Like
Yes.
Jen paid off $78,000 in debt
Wow.
as a mom, and Jill actually lived in an RV
Yes.
to achieve financial freedom.
Like they're really walking the walk,
They are.
which I appreciate.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people talk about it, but they actually did it.
Yeah, and what I find so interesting about this book is
Yeah.
it's not just about like
Right.
the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's not just about budgeting.
it's not about budgeting.
Right.
It's not even just about willpower.
No.
It's about really
Yes.
like diving into the psychology of
Yes.
spending
Yeah.
and how like societal pressures
Yes.
can actually make us
Absolutely.
chase things that we don't even care about.
That don't align with our values.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so fascinating about this book is they
Yeah.
really dive deep into
Yeah.
that concept of tangible versus intangible needs.
Yes.
Like we might think we need that new gadget or that
Yeah.
new outfit,
Yeah.
but it could be that we're craving a sense of belonging or
Yeah.
achievement or
Mhm.
even just like
Yeah.
a feeling of safety and security.
Yes. And they talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
which is
Oh my gosh.
that
that's-
pyramid that
yeah.
we've all seen
Yes, love it.
with the basic needs at the bottom
Uh-huh.
and then those higher self-actualization
Yes.
needs at the top.
Yes. And it turns out a lot of our spending is
Yeah.
trying to fulfill those higher needs, but we're going about it all wrong.
We are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we're trying to buy our way to happiness.
Yes.
When really
Yes.
there are other ways to fulfill those needs, like
Yeah.
spending on dinners with friends
Yeah.
might actually not be as frivolous as it seems
Yeah.
because it's fulfilling that need for connection.
Exactly.
And you know what I think is so interesting too is like
Yeah.
they point out that we're often pressured to overspend on tangible items.
Yes.
The things that look good on Instagram,
Yeah.
the things that, you know, make us look like we have it all together,
Yes.
but we neglect those deeper needs, the
Yeah.
things that truly bring us fulfillment.
Yeah. Which brings us to this point of like,
Yes.
what if you love everything?
Oh, right.
Like, what if you're that person who's just like, I want it all?
I want it all. Yeah.
The book talks about this hilarious story
Yes.
about one of the author's nephews who was obsessed with slugs.
Yes.
He just wanted to collect every slug he could find.
Yes. I love this story.
It's so funny.
It's a perfect illustration of how we can
Yeah.
get caught up in wanting it all.
Yes.
But the authors highlight the power of curiosity
Yes.
to refine our love list.
Yes.
Instead of just blindly buying, they encourage us to pause and ask, what is it about this specific item
Yes.
that appeals to me?
I love that.
Really get curious about it.
And it's so easy to fall into those mental traps.
Oh, totally.
Like labeling ourselves as spenders or savers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm just a spender.
Right.
Like, that's just who I am.
And then we kind of use that as an excuse
Yeah.
to not change our behavior.
Yes.
But the book calls those out. You know, they're like,
Yeah.
these are common cognitive distortions that cloud our judgment.
Yes.
And instead of beating ourselves up about it, they
Yeah.
encourage us to become objective observers of our spending patterns.
So it's less about why am I so bad with money and more about what am I noticing about my spending?
Exactly, yes.
I love that shift.
It's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that really resonated with me
Yeah.
is their concept of financial comparison.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, we've all been there.
Yes.
Right? Like keeping up with the Joneses?
Yeah. They share this story about one of the authors
Yeah.
watching her husband
Uh-huh.
unwrap a power strip as a kid
Yes.
while his brother's got a computer.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like,
Oh, whoa.
ouch.
I know, it's so relatable, right?
So relatable.
We've all felt that pang of like, I'm not enough or I don't have enough.
Yeah.
And their point is that even if you have all the money in the world,
Yeah.
it won't bring you happiness if you're constantly comparing yourself to others.
Right.
So they have this 90-day transaction inventory exercise
Okay.
where you track every single purchase you make for 3 months.
Okay. That sounds a little intense.
It can be,
So
but
nice.
it's so eye-opening because it helps you uncover those hidden spending patterns
Yeah.
that you might not even be aware of.
And they use this really
Yes.
interesting cautionary tale
Yes.
of this couple, Haley and Justin,
Yes.
who inherited $600,000
I know.
but ended up broke
Broke.
because they lacked
Spending awareness.
that spending awareness.
Yeah.
It's a total wake-up call.
It is.
Like winning the lottery
Yeah.
doesn't magically fix your mindset.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't solve the problem if you don't know how to manage your money.
Exactly. And that leads into one of the, I think, most empowering ideas in the book,
Oh, yes.
which is embracing your season.
I love that concept.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
They argue that your financial goals should align with your current life stage.
Yes.
Like, it makes sense.
Yes, totally.
Right.
Like they give an example of their friend Allison, who
Yeah.
was a teacher and was on teacher's salary.
Yeah.
And she was prioritizing paying off debt,
Yeah.
even though she dreamed of traveling. And it's like, you don't have to do everything at once.
Right.
It's okay to have different financial goals
Yeah.
at different times in your life.
Yeah. And it's okay if, like, right now is not the time to do that thing
Yes, exactly.
that you want to do.
Like, give yourself permission to be where you are.
Yes.
And focus on what's important right now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
get ready for this next part because it gets a little
Oh, God.
dark.
Okay, I'm ready.
Manufactured desire.
Ooh, yes.
So this is diving into
Yes.
the history of consumerism
Uh-huh.
and how we're often manipulated into buying more than we need.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And they bring in this fascinating figure,
Yes.
Edward Bernays,
Yes.
who's considered the father of public relations.
Yes.
And he basically used psychology to shape people's desires
Uh-huh.
and buying habits.
Which is kind of unsettling when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like how much of our spending is influenced by
Yeah.
these external forces.
They highlight this statistic that, like, in the early 1900s, families spent about 20% of their income on non-necessities.
Okay.
But by the 2000s,
Yeah.
that number jumped to 50%.
Oh, wow.
So we're buying
Wow.
way more stuff
You're buying so much more.
now than ever before.
It's crazy.
And it all comes back to,
Dopamine, that instant gratification.
yes.
Like companies intentionally make shopping frictionless.
Yeah.
Like think about all those buy now buttons.
Yes.
That are just like one click
Yeah.
and you're done.
Yeah.
Like they're designed to trigger those feel-good chemicals in our brain.
Yeah. So resisting temptation.
Yeah.
It's not just about willpower.
No, it's
It's also about understanding.
It's about understanding the psychology behind it.
Yeah, how our brains are wired.
Yes, exactly.
And they suggest some pretty radical strategies for breaking those patterns,
They do.
like no spend challenges and dopamine fasts.
Yes. Have you ever
Wow.
tried either of those?
I have dabbled in no spend challenges,
Okay.
and I've found them to be surprisingly effective.
They can be.
Like, you think it's going to be so
Yeah.
hard,
Right.
but it's
But it's not as bad as you think.
no. And the book explains the habit loop.
Yes. The
Yeah.
cue routine reward.
Cue routine reward cycle
Yes.
and how to interrupt it.
Yes.
So
fascinating.
instead of online shopping late at night,
Uh-huh.
maybe you try replacing that routine with reading
Yes.
or taking a bath.
Yes. Find something else that brings you pleasure,
Yeah.
that doesn't involve spending money.
That doesn't involve spending money.
Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to stress spending.
Oh, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
for sure.
Like, what are some of their tips?
Well, they talk about
Yeah.
the importance of finding alternative coping mechanisms,
Okay.
like exercise, meditation, spending time in nature,
yeah.
anything that helps regulate those stress hormones
Yeah.
without, breaking the bank.
Right.
And they share this brilliant tip from a friend who created a coupon book for non-monetary self-care activities to combat stress spending.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of going shopping, she would pull out her coupon book
Yeah.
and be like, okay, I'm going to take a bubble bath or I'm going to go for a walk in the park.
Oh, I love that.
It's so simple, but so effective.
So good.
And of course, they talk about social media,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is like a breeding ground
Yeah.
for comparison and impulse buying.
It's that constant stream of you need this,
Yeah.
you're missing out.
Yes.
And they offer this strategy called the impulse intervention list.
I love that.
So tell me about that.
So basically, whenever you feel that urge to buy something you see online,
Yeah.
you add it to a list instead of buying it right away.
Yeah.
And then you wait at least 48 hours
Okay.
before actually making the purchase.
So it's like giving yourself that cooling off period
Yes.
to see if you really want it.
Exactly.
Or if it was just
Or if there's just a fleeting moment of FOMO.
FOMO.
Yeah. So that's the impulse intervention list.
I love that.
It's a good one.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about saying no to what we don't love.
Right.
But what about the things that we can't avoid spending on?
Yes.
Like housing, transportation.
The necessities.
The necessities.
Yeah.
So that's where their section on save smarter, not harder comes in.
I love this section because they acknowledge that we can't eliminate all spending.
Right.
Especially on those necessities.
Yeah, and they have some really clever tips.
They do.
For saving on those big ticket items.
Yes, like with housing.
Yes.
They suggest considering renting, downsizing, or even exploring alternative living arrangements like RVs, which might not be for everyone, but it's an option.
It's an option.
And then with transportation, they emphasize buying used cars and being aware of those sneaky dealer fees that can really inflate the price.
They even break down how choosing a used car over a new one can save you $200 a month.
It's crazy how much money you can save.
That adds up.
It does add up over time.
Okay. One thing I'm always striving for is a simpler life.
Yes, me too.
What do they have to say about that?
So they dedicate a whole section to simplifying, and they introduce this concept called complexity bias, which is our tendency to overcomplicate things.
Oh, yeah.
We do that.
We do.
Like, we like to make things harder than they need to be.
Yes. And they suggest simplifying across 3 areas.
Yes. Physical spaces, schedules, and routines. So with physical spaces, they talk about how clutter can increase stress and make it harder to focus. They have this hilarious anecdote about one of the authors feeling totally overwhelmed by her belongings before downsizing to an RV. And she was just like, I have so much stuff. I don't even know where to start. And so she just started getting rid of things. And it was so freeing for her.
I can imagine.
And then with schedules, it's about creating space for self-care and meaningful activities. It's not all about productivity and hustle. It's about giving yourself time to rest and recharge.
And then with routines, what do they have to say?
So they suggest using spending plans instead of budgets, which I love because it feels less restrictive and more empowering.
Budgets feel very like diety.
Yes, they do.
Like you're restricting yourself.
Yes.
And this feels more like...
It's like a plan.
A plan.
Yeah, it's like a roadmap for your money.
Yes.
It's not about depriving yourself.
Exactly.
It's about making conscious choices about how you want to spend your money.
Yeah, I love that.
Me too.
So they offer these great tips.
They do.
For creating a simple, sustainable spending plan.
That works for you.
That works for you.
Yeah. Not some cookie cutter budget that you found online.
One of the first steps they suggest is creating that 90-day transaction inventory.
Yes. I know it sounds daunting.
It does.
But it's so important because you have to know where your money's going before you can make a plan for it.
Right. And they have this great example of this couple, Haley and Justin, who inherited a ton of money.
I know.
$600,000.
It's crazy.
But they ended up broke.
Because they had no awareness?
Because they had no awareness
of where their money was going.
Of where their money was going.
Yeah.
So earning more doesn't solve the problem.
No.
If you're not paying attention.
Exactly.
To your habit.
Your habits and your spending.
So once you've done that inventory, then
you can start creating a spending plan.
A spending plan.
That aligns with your values and priorities.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that those can change over time.
Yes.
Like remember Allison, our teacher friend, who was focused on paying off debt, even though she really wanted to travel?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to prioritize different things at different stages of your life.
Yeah, and it's okay if right now is not the time to do that thing that you want to do.
It's all about being present and focusing on what's important right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So buckle up.
I'm buckled.
Because this next section gets a little dark.
Oh, I love a little darkness.
We're going into the world of manufactured desire.
Ooh, yes. This is juicy.
So this is where we talk about how advertising, marketing, all those things influence
our spending habit.
Our spending.
Yes.
They talk about this guy, Edward Bernays, who is considered the father of public relations.
Yes, the OG manipulator.
Right.
Yeah.
And he basically used psychology to influence people's desires and spending habits.
Yes, and it's like...
wild.
It's wild to think about, like, how much our behavior is influenced by these external forces.
Yeah, they highlight this statistic that in the early 1900s, families spent about 20% of their income on non-necessities.
Okay.
By the 2000s, that jumped to 50%.
That's a huge jump.
It's wild.
I'm like, what are we buying?
So basically, we are being conditioned to buy more stuff.
Yes, more than we need.
More than we actually need.
Yes.
And it all comes back to
dopamine.
Okay.
And that instant gratification.
Yes.
Like, companies are very smart. They know how to push our buttons.
They do.
They know how to make us feel good so that we buy their products.
Yeah. They talk about how companies intentionally make shopping frictionless.
Yes, they do.
Like, think about all those buy now buttons.
Oh, yeah. One click and you're done.
One click and it's on its way.
Yeah, you don't even have to think about it.
And it's so hard to resist it.
It is.
Because it feels so good.
Yes, it does.
In the moment.
Yes, it's like a little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Every time.
So resisting temptation.
Yeah.
It's more than just willpower.
Yes, it's about understanding how our brains are wired.
Yes, and retraining those neural pathways.
Yes.
And they suggest some pretty radical solutions.
Yeah, like no spend challenges and dopamine fasts.
Have you ever tried?
I've dabbled in both.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So no spend challenges are basically where you commit to not spending any money for a certain period of time on anything that's not essential.
Okay.
So like rent bills, groceries. Those are all fine.
Okay.
But, you know,
the lattes, eating out,
yes.
all the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff is off limits.
Off limits.
For a certain period of time.
So how long have you done a no-spend challenge for?
I think the longest I've done is a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What about a dopamine fast?
So dopamine fasts are interesting. It's basically about depriving yourself of all those things that give you those quick hits of dopamine.
Okay.
So like social media, sugar, caffeine, shopping, all those things that, you know, we tend to overindulge in.
Okay.
And it's really about resetting your brain and kind of like recalibrating your pleasure centers.
Okay, so you're basically giving your brain a break.
Yes, exactly. From all the stimulation.
And then when you come back, you're able to
appreciate those things more. Yeah, and you're not as dependent on them for your happiness.
Okay, so the book does a great job of breaking down the science behind these practices.
Yeah, they talk about the habit loop.
Yeah. Cue, routine, reward.
Yes, and how we can actually rewire our brains by interrupting those patterns.
So it's like, if you notice that you always online shop late at night, maybe instead of doing that, you read a book or take a bath or...
Right, find something else that brings you pleasure.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to stress spending.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What are some of their tips for managing that?
So they highlight the importance of finding alternative coping mechanisms.
Okay.
So like exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, anything that helps regulate those stress hormones without breaking the bank.
Right, because a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm stressed.
Yeah.
I'm just going to buy this thing.
Exactly.
And it's going to make me feel better.
Retail therapy.
And it's like a temporary fix.
It is a temporary fix, but it doesn't actually address the underlying issue.
Yeah, and they shared this really clever tip from this friend who made a coupon book for non-monetary self-care activities.
I love that idea.
To combat stress spending. I was like, that is brilliant.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
But it's so effective.
It's like reminding yourself that you can take care of yourself without spending money.
Exactly.
I love it.
Me too.
Okay, and then of course, social media.
Social media, oh my God.
A breeding ground.
It is.
For comparison.
Yes.
Impulse buying.
All the things.
All the things.
Yeah.
It's that constant stream of, you need this.
Yes.
You're missing out.
It's designed to make us feel inadequate.
Yes.
So that we buy more stuff.
And they offer
this
strategy called the impulse intervention list.
I love this strategy.
Okay.
So basically, whenever you feel that urge to buy something you see on social media, you add it to a list instead of immediately buying it.
Okay.
And then you wait at least 48 hours.
Okay, so it's like a cooling off period?
Yes.
To see if you really want it?
Exactly.
Or if it was just a fleeting moment of FOMO.
Exactly. FOMO is real.
FOMO's real.
It is. I love that. It's a good strategy. And they talk about how companies are constantly trying to remove those barriers to spending.
Yes.
Making it as easy as possible.
One-click checkout.
To click buy now.
Subscribe and save.
Subscribe and save.
All those things
Yeah.
that are designed to make us spend more money.
Without even thinking about it.
Without even thinking about it.
And I think one of their big points is just like becoming aware of those tactics so that you can make conscious choices about your spending.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about all the ways we can say no to what we don't love.
Right.
But what about those things that we can't avoid spending on?
Yeah, like those necessities.
Housing, transportation, food.
Yeah.
That's where the section on Save Smarter, Not Harder.
Yes. I love this section.
Thanks, Dad.
Because it's like, we can't avoid all spending.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But we can be smarter about it.
Exactly.
So they offer these really practical tips for saving on those big ticket items.
Yeah.
Like with housing. They talk about considering renting, downsizing, or even like exploring alternative living arrangements.
Alternative
like RVs.
RVs.
Yeah. Which I know might not be for everyone.
Right.
But it's an option.
Yeah.
And they talk about how like sometimes we get so stuck in our ways of thinking that we don't even consider other possibilities.
Yes.
And so it's just about kind of like opening our minds to different ways of living.
And then with transportation, they talk about buying used cars.
Yes, used cars.
Being aware of those dealer fees.
Oh, yes, those dealer fees.
That can really
get you. Yes.
And they even break it down like choosing a used car over a new one can save you $200 a month.
Like, that's significant.
That is significant.
Especially over time.
That's a lot of lattes. That's a lot of lattes.
It really highlights how small spending differences can snowball.
Yes, they can.
Into big savings.
Yeah, and it's not always about, like, depriving yourself.
Right.
It's just about being more mindful.
Yes.
And making smarter choices.
Okay, so this next section is all about simplifying your life.
Ooh, I love simplifying.
You know, me too. It's like my...
It's like a constant pursuit.
Constant pursuit.
Yes.
So they introduced this concept called complexity bias.
Oh, yes.
Which is our tendency to
overcomplicate things.
To overcomplicate things.
Yeah, we like to make things harder than they need to be.
Why do we do that?
I don't know. I think it's like... We think it's got to be hard to be good.
Right.
Or like we don't trust ourselves to do the simple thing.
Yeah, and they talk about simplifying across
3 areas.
3 areas.
Physical spaces.
Okay.
Schedules and routines.
Okay.
So with physical spaces.
Yeah.
They talk about how clutter can increase stress.
It really can.
It really can.
I notice it when my space is cluttered.
Yes.
My mind feels cluttered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have this hilarious anecdote about one of the authors feeling totally overwhelmed by her belongings before downsizing to an RV.
I feel that.
And she was just like, I have so much stuff. I don't even know where to start. And so she just started getting rid of things. And it was so freeing for her.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And then with schedules,
they
emphasize the importance of
creating space. For self-care. And meaningful activities.
Not just productivity.
Not just productivity.
And hustle. No.
No.
Like, we need time to rest.
Yeah.
To recharge.
To just be. Yeah.
And that's so important for our mental health, for our creativity, for everything.
Yeah.
And then with routines.
They suggest using spending plans instead of budgets.
I love that.
Yeah, because budgets feel...
So restricted.
And
like diety.
Yes, they do.
Like you're depriving yourself.
Yeah, and nobody wants to feel deprived.
Right.
And spending plans feel more like...
A plan.
Yeah. It's like a roadmap for your money.
Yes.
It's not about depriving yourself.
Yes.
It's about making conscious choices.
Yes.
About how you want to spend your money.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, it's a much more positive way to approach your finances.
Totally.
And so they offer these great tips for creating a simple, sustainable spending plan.
That works for you.
That works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not some cookie-cutter budget that you found online that doesn't actually fit your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they really emphasize, like, personalizing it.
And one of the first steps they suggest is...
creating that 90-day transaction inventory.
Which can be a little daunting.
It can be.
But I think they're an example of Haley and Justin, who inherited all that money.
I know, it's a lot of money.
But then ended up broke.
Broke because they weren't paying attention.
Really highlights why that awareness is so important.
Yeah. You have to know where your money's going before you can make a plan for it.
And it's not about shaming yourself for your past spending.
Yeah.
It's just about like getting curious about your habits so that you can make more conscious choices moving forward.
Okay, so once you've done that inventory, what's next?
So then you can start creating a spending plan that aligns with your values and priorities.
Values and priorities.
And I think it's so important to remember that those can change over time.
Yeah.
Like, you know what was important to you 5 years ago.
Right.
Might not be important to you now.
Exactly, and that's okay.
Like their friend Allison, teacher, who was really focused on
paying off debt.
Even though she had dreams of traveling.
I think that's such an important takeaway. It's
it's okay.
It's okay to prioritize different things.
At different times in your life.
At different times in your life.
And to give yourself permission to be where you are.
Exactly.
And to focus on what's important right now.
What's important right now, not what you think should be important or what other people tell you is important.
Okay.
Okay.
So this next section gets a little dark.
Okay, I'm ready for the darkness.
We're diving into the world of manufactured desire.
Oh, yes. This is a good one.
So this is where we talk about how advertising, marketing, all of those things influence our spending habits.
They do. They totally do.
Yeah.
We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us we need to buy more stuff.
To be happy.
To be happy.
To be successful.
To be successful.
To be loved.
To be loved.
And it's all a lie.
It's all a lie.
But it's so convincing.
It is convincing because they're really good at what they do.
They are good at what they do.
Yeah, those marketers know how to push our buttons.
Yeah, they talk about this guy, Edward Bernays.
Yes.
Who is considered the father of public relations. And he basically used psychology to manipulate people.
To manipulate people.
Into buying things.
Yeah, and it's like,
it's great.
It's wild to think about, like, how much our behavior is influenced by these external forces.
And they highlight this statistic that in the early 1900s, families spent about 20% of their income on non-necessities.
Okay.
But by the 2000s, that jumped to 50%.
That's a huge jump.
It's wild.
It's crazy.
And it all comes back to
dopamine and that instant gratification.
Yes.
You know those companies?
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
They're good at it.
They're good at it.
They make us feel good.
They do.
And they know that we'll come back for more.
Yeah, and they talk about how they intentionally make shopping frictionless.
Yes.
Like, think about all those buy now buttons.
Oh, yeah. One click and you're done.
One click and it's at your door.
Yeah. You don't even have to think about it.
Like, you're scrolling on Instagram and you see an ad and you're like, oh, I need that. I need that. And then you click it.
And then it's just like, add to cart.
Add to cart.
Enter your payment information, and it's on its way.
It's so hard to resist.
It is hard.
That instant gratification.
It is.
Because it feels so good.
It does feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
But then later,
the guilt.
The buyer's remorse.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
So resisting temptation?
Yes.
It's more than just willpower.
It is.
It's about understanding how our brains are wired.
Yes, it's about understanding the psychology.
And retraining those neural pathways.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they suggest some pretty radical solutions for breaking those patterns.
Like no-spend challenges and dopamine fasts.
Yes. You ever tried either of those?
I have dabbled in no-spend challenges.
Okay. What about dopamine fasts?
I've been dopamine fasting.
Oh, really?
My whole life.
Oh, tell me about it.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. So no-spend challenges are basically where you commit to not spending any money for a certain period of time on anything that's not essential.
Essentials only.
Essentials only.
So like red bills.
Yes.
Groceries.
Yes.
All the fun stuff.
Like lattes, going out to eat.
Yes.
All the things that we like.
That make life a little more enjoyable.
More enjoyable.
Are off limits.
Off limits.
For a set period of time.
For a set period of time. Yeah. So how long have you done a no-spend for?
I think the longest I've done is a month.
A month.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was challenging.
Yeah.
But it was also really eye-opening.
Wow. I learned that I was spending way more money than I realized.
On things that I didn't even really care about.
Things that weren't actually bringing me joy.
Okay, so dopamine fasts.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So dopamine fasts are interesting.
Yeah.
It's basically about depriving yourself of all those things that give you those quick hits of dopamine.
Okay.
So like social media, sugar, caffeine,
shopping,
shopping,
all the things that we
tend to overindulge in.
Overindulge in.
Yeah.
And it's really about...
It's about resetting your brain.
Resetting.
Yeah, and kind of like recalibrating your pleasure centers.
Okay, so it's like giving your brain a break.
Exactly.
From all the stimulation.
From all the constant stimulation.
And then when you come back, you can actually appreciate...
You can appreciate those things more.
The little things.
Yes, and you're not as dependent on them.
For your happiness.
For your happiness, exactly. Yeah. Because we can get so addicted to those dopamine hits.
To those dopamine hits that we forget.
That there are other ways to experience pleasure.
That's exactly what the book is all about.
Yeah.
It's about finding joy in the simple things.
The simple things.
Yeah.
And the book does a great job of breaking down the science behind these practices.
They talk about the habit loop.
Yeah, cue, routine, reward.
Yes.
And how we can actually...
Rewire our brain.
Rewire our brains.
Yes, by interrupting those patterns.
Yeah. So, like, if you notice that every night before bed, you're online shopping, maybe instead of doing that, you read a book.
Yes.
Or take a bath.
Or meditate.
Or meditate.
Or journal.
Or journal.
Yeah. Find something else that fills that space.
That fills that space and brings you pleasure.
That doesn't involve spending money.
And I think we can all relate to stress spending.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's like when we're feeling stressed, we just want to buy something.
So save something.
To make ourselves feel better.
Like retail therapy.
Retail therapy.
But it's a temporary fix.
It is a temporary fix.
And it doesn't actually...
It doesn't address the underlying issue.
The underlying issue.
Yeah.
And they share this really clever tip.
Yes.
From this friend who made a coupon book.
Yes.
For non-monetary self-care activities.
I love that.
To combat stress spending.
And it's such a good idea.
I know.
It's so simple.
It's so simple.
But it's so effective. It's like a reminder.
Yeah.
That you can take care of yourself.
Without spending money.
Without spending money.
Yes.
And sometimes we just need that reminder.
We do.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to talk about social media. Social media.
It's a breeding ground for comparison.
Yes.
Impulse buying.
All the things.
All the things.
Yeah, it's designed to make us feel inadequate.
Yes.
So that we'll buy more stuff.
Yeah, and it works.
It does.
It does.
But they offer this great strategy.
They do.
Called the Impulse Intervention List.
I love this.
Tell me about it.
So basically, whenever you feel that urge to buy something you see on social media, you add it to a list instead of immediately buying it.
Okay.
And then you wait at least 48 hours.
So it's like a cooling off period.
Exactly.
To see if you really want it.
Exactly.
Or if it was just...
Or if it was just FOMO.
FOMO.
Yeah, that fear of missing out.
FOMO is real?
It is real.
Yeah.
Especially on social media.
Especially on social media.
Yeah, because everyone's always...
Showing off.
Showing off their best selves.
The curated life.
The curated life.
And they talk about how companies are constantly trying to
Yes.
remove those barriers
Yes.
to spending,
Yeah.
making it as easy as possible.
Like one-click checkout.
To just click buy now.
Subscribe and save.
Subscribe and save.
All those things.
All the things.
That are designed to make us spend more money.
Without even thinking about it.
Without even thinking about it, yeah.
So I think one of the big takeaways from this section is just like
awareness.
Awareness of those tactics.
Of the tactics that they're using.
That they're using.
Yeah, because once you're aware of it,
yeah,
you can start to resist it.
Yeah, and make more conscious choices.
Conscious choices about your spending.
Okay, so we've talked about saying no to what we don't love.
Right.
But what about
yes.
the things that we can't avoid spending on?
Yeah, like those necessities.
It's housing, transportation, food.
Yeah.
That's where there's section on save smarter, not harder.
I love this section because it's like, okay, we can't avoid all spending.
Right.
Right.
But we could be smarter about it.
Yes. We can be more intentional.
More intentional.
Yeah.
So they offer these really practical tips.
They do?
For saving. On those big ticket items.
Yes, like with housing.
Let's talk about
considering renting.
Renting, downsizing.
Downsizing.
Or even exploring alternative living arrangements.
Alternative living arrangement.
Like RVs.
What are these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I know might not be for everyone.
Right.
But you know it's an option.
Yeah.
And they talk about how like sometimes we get so stuck in our ways of thinking.
Yes.
That we don't even consider other possibilities.
Yeah.
And so it's just about kind of like opening our minds
to
different ways of living.
Yeah, and then with transportation, they talk about buying used cars.
Yes, used cars are the way to go.
being aware of
Yeah.
those dealer fees.
Oh, yes, those dealer fees.
That can really
They get you. Yes.
And they even break down, like, choosing a used car over a new one can save you $200 a month.
Like, that's significant.
That is significant.
Especially over time.
That's a lot of lattes.
That's a lot of lattes or avocado toast or whatever your vice is. Okay, so one of the big takeaways for me is really just this idea of, like, aligning your spending with your values.
Yes.
Like, it's not just about
saving money. It's about being intentional.
It's about creating a life that you actually love.
Yes. And that reflects your values.
And they don't shy away from the hard stuff either.
No, they don't.
Like
manufactured desire.
Manufactured desire?
Oh, yeah.
That was
a mind-blowing chapter. Yeah.
Like, it's kind of unsettling
It is.
to realize how much of our spending is actually driven by
external forces.
These external forces.
Yeah.
Like, we think we're making these independent decisions, but really we're being influenced by advertising, marketing, all these things.
And they break it down.
They do.
They talk about frictionless shopping.
Yes.
Buy now button.
All the things that are designed to
just get us to spend.
Yes. To make it as easy as possible.
Without even thinking about it.
And
it works.
Well, it does work.
It does.
Yeah.
But the good news is, once we're aware of these tactics, we can start to resist them.
Exactly. Awareness is the first step.
Awareness is key.
Yes. And then they offer some really good tips for becoming more mindful
of our triggers.
Of our spending triggers, like remembering the habit loop.
Cue routine reward.
Yes, cue routine reward.
And how to interrupt those automatic
spending cycles.
Trending cycles.
Yeah, like if you notice that you always online shop.
Late at night
when you're bored.
Or
stressed.
Yeah. Maybe instead of doing that, you
find something else to do.
Read a book. Go for a walk. Call a friend.
Yeah, anything that doesn't involve spending money.
Exactly.
And then they also offer,
some really good strategies for those situations where temptation is high.
Right.
Like stress spending.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Like that coupon book for non-monetary self-care activities.
Yes, I love that.
It's so brilliant.
It's so simple, but it's so effective.
It's just a reminder that you can take care of yourself without spending money.
Exactly.
And then there's social media.
Oh
my God.
The comparison trap.
It's
real. And they offer this strategy called the impulse intervention list.
Yes.
Which I love.
And this is basically...
So whenever you see something on social media that you want to buy, you add it to a list.
Okay.
Instead of immediately buying it.
Okay.
And then you wait at least 48 hours.
Okay, so it's a cooling off period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you can decide if you really want it.
Or if it was just FOMO.
That
fear of missing out.
So I think one of the big points that they're making in this section is just about like
awareness
of the tactics that companies are using.
Yeah, they're very sneaky.
They are.
And
they're good at what they do.
They are good at it.
So once we're aware of it,
yes,
then we can start to
resist it and
make those conscious choices about how we're spending.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about aligning our spending with our values.
Yes.
We've talked about the importance of resisting temptation.
Right.
But what about this idea that our spending can actually make a difference in the world?
I love that they talk about this because it's not just about our personal finances. It's about our impact on the planet and society.
Yeah. And they remind us that even small changes can make a big difference.
Yes, they can.
Like they share this statistic about how the recent slowdown in sales actually forced some companies
to lower their prices. Yeah, because they weren't selling as much.
It shows that we actually have power.
We do.
As consumers to influence change.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the ultimate message of the book.
It's about empowerment. It's about taking control of our finances and using our money to create a life and a world that we love.
I love that.
Thank you.
So tell us what resonated with you the most.
Ooh, that's a good question.
From our deep dive.
I think for me, it was really that emphasis on aligning your spending with your values.
Yeah.
Like it's not just about saving money.
Right.
It's about being intentional with your money.
Yeah.
And using it to support the things that you care about.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm really trying to be more mindful of.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
What resonated with you the most from our deep dive into buy what you love without going broke?
Yes. Tell us in the comments.
Tell us in the comments.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe.
And share this episode with your friends.
Yes, spread the love.
We'll be back soon with more deep dives into fascinating topics.
Until then, happy spending.
Happy spending.